My name is Sepida Hariri. I'm the program manager at the Sadhguru Center, and I'm also a faculty here at the center. Today, we are happy to welcome you to the Sadhguru Center Speaker Series, where we present virtual lectures and discussions highlighting the research and explorations of our multidisciplinary community of scientists, global experts, and thought leaders. So for those of you joining us for the first time, the Sadhguru Center is a multidisciplinary research center based at the Department of Anesthesia, Critical Care, and Pain Medicine at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. Our mission is to weave together science and spiritual wisdom through research, education, and outreach. We aim to bring tools of well-being to both patients and healthcare providers to enhance consciousness, cognition, and compassion. We offer wellness programs, conduct scientific studies in various communities, and bring together world leaders from diverse fields to collaborate and innovate health and well-being solutions. So as part of our work, we work to contribute to this field of research in mind-body interventions and see how they positively transform our individual lives and the world. So the Sadhguru Center uses cutting-edge modalities to better understand mind-body interventions and catalyze their impact in healthcare, business, and other settings using multiple different ways. So our speaker series presentation today is on Yoga, Your Brain on Yoga by M. Saketh, who is a PhD candidate in neuroscience at the Center for Consciousness Studies at NIMHANS, India. He will be discussing the impact of mind-body practices rooted in the yogic science, such as Isha Yoga, on well-being, and what happens in the brain during the practice of meditation and pranayama, and explore the possible mechanism by which yoga practices leads to enhanced cognition and well-being. Saketh's research focuses on understanding the impact of Isha Yoga practices on cognition and well-being using multi-modal approach involving EEG, MRI, and psychological questionnaires. I'm really looking forward to this conversation because it's very well connected to the work that we are doing at the center. And I'm sure many of our audience are also very eager to hear what Saketh has to share with us from his research. So Saketh, before you go into sharing with us your study findings, I wanted to ask you what inspired you to do this work.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present my work to the Sadhguru Center. It's a wonderful privilege. So I'm speaking from Bangalore. I'm currently doing a PhD at the Center for Consciousness Studies at NIMHANS. So NIMHANS is one of the pioneering mental health institutions in India, working on mental health and various psychiatric and psychological issues for a very long time. And NIMHANS is at the forefront of integrating yoga with various psychiatric illness, and it has done a lot of work in this direction. So as you can see in the slide, the logo of NIMHANS itself has Samatvam Yoga Uchyati as its tagline, which means yoga is equanimity. So yoga has been a part of NIMHANS for a very long time, right? A long time. And let me go ahead with it's a very opportune time, because as we know, India has taken G20 presidency this year, and the theme is relevant, very relevant to how we live. And the theme is One Earth, One Family, One Future. And the theme perfectly captures what yoga is and what yoga means. Similarly, world leaders increasingly recognize that only by functioning as one can we attain health. So this is by WHO and the World United Nations Environmental Program, wherein they say that health can be attained only when we live in harmony with the ecosystem as well as the other life forms. So by this, it's very clear that functioning as one is very important, and this oneness is yoga. To experience oneness of existence is yoga. And yoga as a science provides methods by which one can experience this oneness of existence. So this is what Prime Minister Narendra Modi had to tell in the UNGA speech in 2014, wherein he emphasized that yoga is an invaluable gift of India's ancient tradition, and it embodies unity of mind and body, thought and action, restraint and fulfillment, harmony between man and nature, a holistic approach to health and well-being. So there's a lot of misconception that yoga is a physical exercise, but rather yoga is not a physical exercise, and it's the science of experiencing the oneness of existence. And yoga can open up a new horizon of peace and harmony. This set the tone for International Day of Yoga, and as we know, it's been celebrated every year on June 21st. Not only yogic sciences, even modern physics kind of intellectually says that everything in existence happens as one. So this is what Frank Wilczek, who was a Nobel Prize winner in physics 2004, has to say about how reality happens. So to quote him, detailed study of matter reveals that our body and brain, the physical platform of our self, is against all intuition built from the same stuff as not self, and appears to be continuous with it. Not only modern physics, even emerging data from neuroscience indicates that sense of an individual self is a kind of illusion, and this illusion kind of breaks down with the practice of yoga. So there are certain boundaries which are the brain, which kind of create this individuality, sense of individuality, and this sense of individuality breaks down with the practice of yoga. And that has been and how it happens has been part of my PhD work as well. And India has, as we know, India has a glorious tradition of yoga. There have been many great beings from thousands of years who have worked on the science of yoga, who have worked within themselves to spread that science to as many people as possible. And all started with, say, Adi Yoga 15,000 years ago. And there have been many great beings like Buddha, Mahavira, Ramakrishna, etc., and Sadhguru. And all of them have provided methods which are very relevant to the times in which they live in. And our lab has been focusing on different traditions of yoga and meditation in the last 15-20 years. So we have worked extensively on Buddhist meditation practice called as Vipassana. And we also worked on Brahmakumari's Raja Yoga tradition, Art of Living, Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, and more recently, the heartfulness meditation. And I have taken up the work on Isha Yoga since 2017. So one of the first studies on yoga actually happened in NIMHANS, and it was done by Professor T. Desiraju, who founded the Department of Neurophysiology, and he's one of the pioneering neurophysiologists from India. So he started the project called as Project Consciousness in 1975, which kind of explored the science of pranayama and various meditation practices. And since then, a lot of other work has happened in this similar direction, culminating in the work on Isha, which I'm carrying out right now. And this also has led to the founding of the Center for Consciousness Studies in the year 2019, whose aim is to explore consciousness from various different yoga and meditation traditions perspectives. And this has resulted in a lot of scientific findings which show that meditation induces changes in the brain, neuroplasticity, and a lot of work we did was on EEG, changes during the practice of meditation like Vipassana. And we also showed changes in sleep architecture with the practice of Vipassana, Sudarshan Kriya. This was a study done on heartfulness meditation. And as I was telling, I took up this work on Isha Yoga in 2017, and since then have been working on this as part of my PhD. So Isha Yoga is a tradition which incorporates all the 4 parts of yoga: karma, bhakti, gnana, and kriya, and it provides methods, various methods to attain to this universality of existence, and at the same time, as a consequence, better mental health and well-being happens. So Isha includes various practices like Hatha Yoga, Shambhavi Mahamudra, Shunya meditation, and Samyama meditation, each one focused on different aspect of one's well-being, and each provides a stepping stone towards attaining to that universality of existence. And for my PhD, I have been looking at the impact of Shambhavi Mahamudra and Shunya meditation on the brain using EEG as one of the key study parameters.
Wonderful. Saketh, thank you so much. It's wonderful to see how you are combining the frameworks from the scientific research and also the yogic understanding together to make a more impactful research. And I'm sure it helps you to form better questions and look into the fundamental questions that have been there for many years. So tell us a little bit about your PhD thesis.
Yes. So this is like kind of an overview of what I've been doing in the last 6 years. So I have, it's a cross-sectional study with 3 groups of participants. One is advanced meditators in Isha Yoga, who have been initiated into Shunya meditation and who have done Samyama. And then a novice meditation category, which is people who have done Shambhavi Mahamudra. And then controls are those people who have not been exposed to any form of yoga or meditation practice. And I'm trying to understand the science of these practices using psychological questionnaires, which is basically to understand the subjective well-being, how the participant feels from their own perspective. And then to correlate that with objective measures of well-being, which can be measured using techniques like EEG, which is electroencephalography, and MRI, magnetic resonance imaging, structural and functional aspects of it. So using this 3 multi-modal approach, I'm trying to understand what happens in the brain during practice of Shunya and Samyama. So as you can see here on the left-hand side, this is one of the advanced meditators doing Shunya practice, and this is the cap which we generally place on the participant while they practice meditation. So this is a 128 channel EEG cap, which picks up the brain oscillations while the participant is doing the practice. And this is MRI, which is another part of my study.
Okay,
so yeah.
So Saketh, before we move on to looking at the brain oscillations, which is the core of your PhD work, I wanted to talk about the work that has been done by your team during the COVID pandemic. We all know it has had a devastating impact on global mental health, but it also presented an opportunity for everyone, whether the research community, medical community, and also the general public, to try and find methods that are scalable and usable for the general public to enhance their resilience. So when something happens from the outside, we are less impacted. And yogic practices are definitely one of those excellent examples of such practices. So can you tell us about the work done at NIMHANS during the pandemic?
Yes. So as we know, like COVID has had a tremendous impact on everybody's mental health. According to WHO, there was 25% increase in prevalence of anxiety and depression worldwide during that time. And nearly 1 in 4 young adults in the US was treated for mental health during the pandemic, according to a survey done by CDC USA. And similarly, similar reports came from United Kingdom as well, wherein there was a dramatic increase in both depression and anxiety. So as you can see here, the prevalence increased by over 2,000 cases per 1 lakh, especially in the age group 25 to 50 years, who has faced the brunt of this pandemic. And if you look at the change in prevalence of depressive disorder, for example, if you consider India, there has been over 35% increase in the prevalence of depressive disorder in the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's a huge number. And majority of these cases, I think, are still underdiagnosed. So during this challenging times, we thought of understanding what impact practices like yoga have on one's mental health and well-being. And for that, we did a survey in the southern Indian state of Karnataka. We sent the survey to over 40,000 Isha meditators in Karnataka using an address-based sampling strategy. And we followed Cherry's guidelines, which are the guidelines given for carrying out survey studies in a standardized manner. There were high response rates for the study. So we received over 1,300 responses from Isha meditators. And we also had controls who were nominated by the Isha meditators to be part of the survey. And these people do not have any practice history of yoga or meditation. And we use the snowball sampling for this part. And after various exclusions and kind of filtering out the data, we finally ended up with 3 groups of people, experts, intermediates, and novice Isha meditators. Experts were those who've been practicing regularly for more than 2 years, who have done Shunya and Shambhavi Mahamudra, Shakti Chalana Kriya. Intermediates were those who have been practicing for 6 months to 2 years and who have done Shambhavi Mahamudra and various Hatha Yoga practices. And novices were the group of people who been practicing for 6 months, and they've been practicing Shambhavi Mahamudra alone. Based on this criteria, we thought of looking at what kind of impact these practices have on well-being. So some of the things which we looked at was perceived stress. So what you can see here is on the x-axis is CNT's controls, NOVs, novices, intermediates, and experts. We had a substantial people in each of the categories. On the y-axis is the perceived stress score. So perceived stress score measures individuals' perceived stress as they feel the stress which they're going through. And perceived stress score in the category in the range 0 to 13 is considered low stress, and anything from 14 to 26 is considered moderate stress. So if you can see in the controls, the median perceived stress score was 19. So these are all healthy controls who have no medical issues, who have all smoking, alcohol, everything has been removed. And healthy controls, they were undergoing moderate stress, possibly because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And what we noticed was when compared to the control group, the novice group, which has been practicing yoga consistently for 6 months, there was a drop in 6 points. That is, median score came down to 13 points, which is a low stress category. So, and the effect size is very large. So it's a very significant finding in that sense. And similarly, expert meditators, the median stress score was even lower. So one thing which we can infer from this is consistent practice of yoga for as short as 6 months can produce a dramatic change in the perceived stress score levels. Similar kind of thing was observed for even mental distress, which was where controls had a mild mental distress and the novices and the other groups had normal mental distress. And similarly with the well-being, wherein the controls had a median score of 60, and the score is from 0 to 100, and the scores closer to 100 indicate higher well-being. And as we can see, the meditators had a score which is over 20 points more than median points more than the control group. And these are again a very large effect size. Same thing was observed for balance. Median score for controls was 7, and it was close to 16 for the expert practitioners, which is over 100% increase in the level of balance which they feel. And what we observed was also that sleep, there were a lot of sleep changes which were seen. For example, the quantity of sleep, as the meditation practice increased, the duration of meditation practice increased, the sleep quantity decreased to less than 6 hours for majority of the advanced practitioners. And this is not at the cost of sleep quality. Sleep quality was very high for the expert practitioners compared to the other groups. So quantity reduced, but quality remains high. And this possibly could be happening because of the relaxation which is produced by the various yoga practices throughout the day. And this could reflect in the sleep as well. And we also observed changes in the diet as the expertise increased. As we can see here, over 80% of the people who are in the expert category are vegetarians, and only 20% were non-vegetarians. And this changes as the meditation proficiency increases. So possibly even diet could have a link, could play a big role in modulating the stress levels and well-being, as we clearly know right now that there's a gut-brain linkage which is at play when it comes to well-being. And we also observed quite fascinatingly that regularity of practice is important, especially in the initial few months, wherein because of the large sample we received, there were a lot of people who were not practicing regularly, like say less than 2 times per week. And we had one group like that, irregular meditation practitioners, and there was no significant difference between those who did not practice any form of yoga, which is control group, versus those who practice yoga but not consistently. So I think the consistent practice is quite important, especially in the initial phases of learning any meditation practice. And same thing was observed for even well-being. And this kind of shows that systematic practice is important in the especially first 40 days to 6 months.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Saketh, for that. I'm sure it has been really challenging to conduct such large-scale studies during the COVID pandemic. It's really groundbreaking work. And it's also very well aligned with the findings here in the US that the Sadhguru Center and our collaborators have done during the pandemic. For example, a study we did here, very similar to that study that you just explained, showing that a population of 5,000 Isha meditators and 2,500 controls showed a significant higher well-being levels and significant lower stress levels for people who regularly do a yoga practice, which shows us that they can create that resilience to be more, more comfortable going through a challenging time. There was also another study done by Dr. Tracy Tang at Rutgers, looking at 600 college students during the pandemic, and again showing very simple 15-minute Upa yoga practices reduce their stress, anxiety, depression symptoms, and increase their well-being. And also, Sadhguru offered inner engineering completion online during the pandemic, which used to be only in person, where people can learn the Shambhavi practice. And we also conducted another study on that, and also saw that people going through this online initiation and doing their practice have much improvement in their psychological well-being and sleep and so on. So looks like anywhere around the world you give these tools to people, it will make a wonderful impact.
Yeah.
So moving on to the mechanistic understanding of how yogic practices impact their well-being, both in the context of being able to prescribe them to patients in different conditions and make sure it's the most impactful kind of practice that we offer to them, but also in the context of if you are in a healthy condition, how you can enhance your well-being and reach the peak of your well-being. And also it offers a window to look into questions about consciousness. So I know you've been doing research on various different yogic practices. Shambhavi, for example, is a flagship program with Isha Foundation. It is being practiced by millions of practitioners worldwide. So can you tell us about the brain oscillations and the neural correlates that you have found, especially with Shambhavi, with your research?
Your voice is breaking. I can't hear you. Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Your voice is breaking. I can't hear you.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was hoping that you can tell us about your findings with especially the neural correlates of Shambhavi that you've been working with.
Correct. Yeah. So before I go forward, I'll just share a small video about what the typical experiment looks like. So this was shared by one of the advanced practitioners who came for my study. And this kind of captures what I'm trying to do. It's a short video. Yeah, so what you see here in the video is basically, I put this EEG cap, which is electroencephalography, and this picks up the brain oscillations during different states which they go through in the lab. One is the resting state, wherein they just sit silently and kind of relax. And another is during practice of, say, Shambhavi and Shunya meditation practice. And then I kind of understand what is happening in the brain during that practice. So what I share here is very preliminary findings, which are unpublished and done on a subset of study participants. So brain oscillations, just to give an outline of what brain oscillations are. So any wave has 3 parameters: so wavelength, frequency, and amplitude. And brain has this, produces this different oscillations during different activities that we perform, or different states of consciousness which we go through, like sleeping and dreaming and waking, etc. So what you see on the topmost is delta oscillations, which is usually observed in the deepest forms of sleep, which ranges from 0.5 to 4 hertz kind of thing. And then there is theta oscillations, which are seen when somebody is transitioning from wakefulness to sleep. And these are from 4 to 8 hertz, and it kind of indicates deep relaxation and meditative state. It is also seen during memory consolidation and other aspects of cognition as well. And then there is alpha oscillations, which range from 8 to 12 hertz, which kind of indicate wakeful, relaxed state. And then there is beta oscillations from 12 to 27, which indicate alert, active mind. And then there are gamma oscillations above 27, 30 hertz, which indicate intense focus. The mind is very alert and trying to, it's like a higher perception kind of thing, we could say. And these different oscillations can go together simultaneously. It's not like only one oscillation happens at one particular time. Oscillations can coexist. This is called as coupling of oscillations. For example, as you listen to me right now, if you are listening to me actively, the brain would be producing beta oscillations. At the same time, you're also a little relaxed because it's like there's nothing stress which is happening around. And then you would also see alpha oscillations, so they can coexist. So what you see here is called as power spectral plots. This is for during the practice of Sukha Kriya, which is one of the practices during the Shambhavi practice. So this is during the theta phase, 6 to 8 hertz. So what you see here is the two-dimensional representation of the brain. It's like the brain is projected onto a 2D map. And what you see here is the power of the oscillation. So the hotter colors, what you see here is the power. The hotter color indicates more power, that is more of amplitude of that particular oscillation. And the lighter color indicates the lower power. So this is the advanced meditators. This is the controls, and these are the beginners in Isha Yoga. So what you can see here is an increase in the frontal. This is the frontal midline region, increase in frontal midline theta, and also an occipital theta, which is observed. I will tell as we go forward what this indicates, but for now, just some of the findings. Similarly, we also observed an increase in the gamma oscillations in the 30 to 40 hertz range. We have not looked into the higher frequencies yet. And this is just a preliminary finding, as I said, on a subset of data. As you can see, even in the gamma frequency range, there is an increase in the occipital region and the frontal regions for the advanced practitioners when compared to the other groups. So as I was indicating, theta, any oscillation which is towards the lower frequency indicates more of relaxation, and any oscillation which is more towards the higher frequency indicates more of alertness and the sharpness of mind. what we observe here is a kind of combination of both relaxation, which is indicated by theta oscillations, and alertness, which is indicated by the gamma oscillations. And a similar kind of thing was also observed for the meditation, the breath watching, wherein there was an increase in frontal midline theta for the advanced practitioners and increase in occipital theta compared to the other groups. Same with gamma oscillations, where there was an increase in the frontal midline and the occipital region. So this is what it usually looks like when it's like, what you see here is a snapshot of the recording during one of the sessions for a control participant. These are the alpha oscillations which you see, and this increases in amplitude for the meditation practitioners, and something like this. This is during one of the states for an advanced meditation practitioner. As you can see, there's an increase in the amplitude in the lower alpha, higher theta range. And as I was telling, one very interesting thing which we have been looking at is the coupling of low frequencies and the high frequencies. So, for example, this is what one of the meditators we saw during Shambhavi, breath watching. So these are the low frequency oscillations, which you can see, and these are coupled with the higher frequency oscillations. So this is very interesting because some of my subjects, control participants, they tell me during the session that they find it very challenging actually to be focusing on the breath for 10 to 15 minutes, and they either indicate they are drowsy or they indicate that their mind is alert but they're not relaxed. So they kind of find it contradictory that relaxation and alertness can happen at the same time. They are of an understanding that when relaxation is there can't be alertness, and when there's alertness of mind, there can't be relaxation. And this is what is seen in meditation, where there is alertness of mind, where the mind is very alert. At the same time, there is relaxation, and this kind of is seen by the EEG coupling of low frequencies and high frequencies as well. And this is one very interesting finding which we've been looking at. And we also did some preliminary work on some of the networks which are usually observed during meditation practice. So any meditation practice like breath watching goes through various stages. So
Saketh, can I interpret for a second?
Yes, please.
There is one question in the chat I thought is very relevant to address now. The question is, are these the same or different neurons or neuronal networks generating theta and gamma oscillations?
So these are different networks. So theta oscillations, especially the frontal midline theta, usually are produced. Source localization studies show that it's produced by anterior cingulate cortex, which is a critical hub in the brain, and this plays a major role in attention, self-regulation, and also the activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. So the frontal midline theta, ACC, and occipital gamma, it's a different network. So these are different networks, which is what I can think of right now.
Thank you.
Yeah. So any meditation practice, it has to go through certain stages. For example, a practice like breath watching, the initial instruction could be pay attention to the breath as it moves in and moves out. And while one pays attention to the breath, the mind tends to wander. That's when mind wandering network, which is indicated by the default mode network, is active. And then once the mind wanders, one has to recognize that the mind has wandered. And that's the point wherein the salience network in the brain gets activated. And once recognition happens, the mind can be brought back to the breath attention. And that's when the attentional networks which sustain the focus on the breath are activated. So we did some work on these networks using microstates. It's on, again, subset of data. We have not explored the full data set yet. So what we observed is for the saliency network, there was an increase in activation for the advanced practitioners when compared to the other groups. And similarly, there was an increase in activation for the attentional network for the advanced meditators compared to the novice and the control. So basically, this indicates that they're very well aware when the mind wanders, and they can bring back and pay attention in a sustained manner to the breath as it happens.
So was that analysis with the EEG data only, or was that MRI
Yes.
data?
No, this is EEG data only. From EEG only, we could map the microstates.
Okay. Because we also
from
published another set of work a couple of years ago with Samyama, where we found a similar, it was published in Frontiers, and similar findings were enhanced salience and attention networks. So it's interesting that you find the same thing with EEG. Yes,
I think this could be more prominent if we add more data points, because we have close to 40 in each group, and this is just kind of 7 or 8 people right now. So it could be more prominent as we add more data. And that's the EEG part of the study and the psychological questionnaires.
Wonderful. So Saketh, before you move on to the next section, first of all, I hope that we see your publications soon so we can learn more about the detail of the work. It's really wonderful. Thank you for sharing all that.
Sure, thank you so much.
Have you looked at other components of Shambhavi as well?
So for my study, I'm looking at only Sukha Kriya and the breath watching. We could not do the study on the other aspects because there's a lot of noise in the brain because of movement which happens, and there's a lot of artifact which is generated during the other aspects of Shambhavi which require some form of movement. Right. So because of which we are not able to study the whole portion.
Okay, thank you. So another question I have is, we have seen in other work published by, Sadhguru Center's collaborator led by Dr. Senthil Sadashivam, we have shown that in advanced meditation programs, for example, blood biomarkers that are associated with, brain health and sense of happiness and joy, like BDNF and anandamide, are increased. Right. So I'm wondering, in your findings, have you seen any activations in any parts of the brain, whether in your EEG data or MRI data, that can be correlated to, sense of joy and ecstasy that anecdotally people share who do these practices like Shambhavi, for example?
No, we have not looked into that aspect yet.
Okay.
So but definitely that's a potential, yeah.
Right, I'm sure there are so many questions we can ask in this. So for the interest of time, I want to move on to questions from the audience, but I want, if you can take 2 more minutes, and I know you have some more content to cover, so you can briefly
sure,
go over.
Yeah, I'll wind up, yes, I'll wind up in a couple of minutes. So,
hi. I have a question. Sepide?
Yes, so Saketh, we have Dr. Kestas Kavraga, who's the head of neuroimaging at the Sadhguru Center. So he has a question for you before we move on. Go ahead.
I might have missed. I might have missed the explanation because I was in and out. But how did you come up with the networks?
This is based on the microstates. So from the EEG, we could get the microstates, which are identified. There are 4 canonical microstates which are identified, each one indicating one network. And based on that, we could correlate with the microstates which we found in our study, and then link that to either the salience or the attention network and see the differences between the 3 groups.
So what does that mean? I mean, it's not source localized data, or is it? Or are you taking just the electrode activations and mapping it
yes,
to...
this is not source localization data. This is based on already established findings in microstates which link each microstate to one particular network.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you.
It's already well established, actually, the 4 microstates.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, thank you so much. So just a couple of minutes, I'll be winding up. So as we, it's very important as we look at this data that it's important to understand that health happens as one and not mental health separately and physical health separately. And this is very important because, as we can see, since 1990, there has been a dramatic decline in the various communicable diseases, and there's an increasing risk in the NCDs. And WHO now recognizes mental health disorders to be part of NCDs, and close to 80% of the people with NCDs have mental illness, and similarly, the same numbers goes for those with mental illness having NCDs either in the future or already having. So it's very important to look at this as the same side of the, look at this as one thing to be targeted and not separately. And as we go, for example, since 1990, there's been over 20% increase in NCDs, and mental health especially has been pretty, the numbers are pretty bad. So 1 in every 7 people have this mental or substance use disorder currently, and these numbers can be quite underdiagnosed, and they pose a huge risk globally, especially CBDs and the mental disorders, which are quite increasing in number. So to give an overview of what this indicates, so meditation as a science provides methods by which one can enhance their attention, emotion regulation, awareness. And this has been shown by many studies which indicate regions like anterior cingulate cortex, insula, prefrontal cortex, especially these are coming from the MRI studies, and studies also report altered functional connectivity in the default mode network, increased alpha and theta power in meditation practitioners, improved attention, increased P300 amplitude, increased alpha and theta power, and better emotion regulation. So all of this basically indicates that there is an increased self-regulation which happens through practice of meditation, because it trains an individual to understand and work upon one's own mind so that thought and emotion can happen the way one wanted to happen and not the other way. And this ultimately leads to enhanced well-being, which we've been observing in various studies, not just on Isha Yoga, but also various studies on different yoga practices globally. And this is our center, which has been doing this work for the last many years. This is in Bangalore. Yeah, thank you so much. And any questions?
Thank you so much, Saketh. It was a wonderful presentation, very enriching. Thank you. So there's one, I'm looking at questions in the chat. Dr. Tilak Verma is asking, I've heard about meditators need less sleep. How does this balance against dementia risk and higher mortality, including cardiovascular disease, seen in lower amounts of sleep?
Yeah, so lower, it's like sleep quantity is decreasing, and this is not happening kind of forcibly. It's happening naturally as a person becomes more relaxed during the day because of various practices and because of the way he lives, a kind of relaxation which happens, which compensates for the amount of sleep which is required in the night. And this goes to a large, this is actually one of my meditators, one of my subjects in my study, he reports that he sleeps for around 2.5 to 3 hours every night. And there have been many subjects of mine who actually report sleeping even 3 to 4 hours every night, and they're perfectly fine in every parameter, cognitive parameter, and everything is fine around them. It's just that the need for sleep has come down because of the practices which provide relaxation in various other ways.
Yeah, so Saketh, as a sleep specialist, I agree with what you're saying. I've heard that anecdotally as well. But this is all self-reported sleep. And with the availability of sleep trackers, you might want to do a small sample and see if the amount of sleep that they're saying they're getting is actually the amount they got. Because, the mortality risk for cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, all increases if you're not sleeping enough. So for that signal to come through, you would probably need a very long study. But at least for now, I think you ought to confirm if that what you're hearing anecdotally that I need much sleep, which I'm also, hearing from people who are doing this, asanas and kriyas, you need to confirm that, I think.
Yes, we, especially for my study, I have not done any polysomnography to look at what exactly is happening as they sleep, but this is just a cross-sectional study which was reporting. But my research lab has been working on the sleep architecture of other practices like Sudarshan Kriya and Vipassana meditation practice. And in that, they reported an increase in the slow wave sleep, the percentage of slow wave sleep in the advanced meditation practitioners compared to the control participants. And also they have more, the less of interruptions during sleep, and the sleep onset also is much quicker in the meditators.
Excellent, good work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Bala, I don't know if you have any questions, if you would like to ask any questions. And I'm also looking at the chat. The audience, please, if you have any questions, please put on the chat.
Saketh, wonderful work.
Thank you so much.
For the presentation.
Thank you so much.
The key is when you take brain, they talk about sensory sensations, motor functions, perception, thoughts, and emotions. So can you explain how a yoga meditation practice, either Shambhavi or anything else, can affect each one of these domains?
Thought, perception, and
sensations, motor functions, perceptions, emotions, and thoughts. Can you just talk about thoughts alone? I think you touched upon other things during the presentation. What can you tell about these meditative practices on thoughts? Correct.
So one very important thing which I have been observing is that there's a it's kind of little complex, because as one progresses in meditation, there are two things which happen. One thing is the frequency of thoughts reduces, as we can observe in the even the deactivation of the default mode network. And another very important thing which my study subjects tell me is that the identification with the thoughts comes down, because of which, even though thoughts come, they kind of ignore it because it doesn't mean anything to them anymore. And that's one thing which I don't observe in beginners of meditation practice, who are still identified with their thoughts, and they report that it's difficult to engage with so many thoughts coming into the mind all the time when they sit for meditation practice. And it's even higher for controls, who find it overwhelming to witness the mind with so much thought. And that is something which is unsettling for a lot of control subjects. And I think the dynamics can also be looked at, the way the brain networks change during this thought full stages. So that's one thing which I can.
Right. Is there a way that you measure this, or you're just quoting anecdotes?
No, this is based on the phenomenological aspects of the study, not based on the networks as of now.
Right. And is there can you hypothesize, is there a causality or like any network responsible for it? Any hypothesis on that?
Yes, I think definitely the deactivation of the DMN network can be observed during this advanced meditation practices, wherein the mind is well focused on whatever the object of meditation is. And also there's likely more activation of the attentional networks, which kind of, again, it's quite nuanced, because attentional network activation also could be something like an inverted U-shaped curve, wherein as the person becomes more and more proficient in the meditation practice, the requirement to engage the attention network comes down, because it becomes an effortless process, which is more engaged during the middle stages of the meditation proficiency, wherein they're still putting an effort to pay attention to the breath, for example.
Right. I think there are some questions in the chat. You can take over. Thank you, Saketh.
Yeah, sure, thank you.
Yes, so Dr. Archana Purushottam is asking, did you account for education level and handedness? She's also asking, I believe all the results were EEG. Are you planning to do similar analysis with your MRI data?
Yes, I'll be looking at, I have not yet done the data collection for MRI. MRI, I'll be looking at only the few of the subjects in the advanced meditation category. And yes, I will be matching them for the right-handedness, and age also has been matched for the EEG part.
Okay, great. So for the interest of time, I think we need to keep the rest of the questions for another event. Hopefully we'll have you again, Saketh. But to close, if you can tell us in one sentence, what would be the next step for your future direction of your research?
So there is so much of data right now, which I think which we need to look at in detail what's happening, because there's a lot of nuance in this, and so many parameters which we can observe and correlate this with the well-being parameters. And we also have respiration and the heart rate data available with us. So look at the changes in the heart rate variability, changes in the respiration parameters as somebody enters deep into shunya meditation, for example, or breath watching. What is happening, the dynamics, the interplay of dynamics happening, and again correlate that with the subjective well-being which they report. I think this is these are some of the few things which I would like to look at.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Saketh, for your excellent work and for sharing your work with us. We're looking forward to seeing more from your research and from your team. So
thank you so much.
Sharing my screen
Thank
again.
you so much for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you so much, Saketh. So I have a few more announcements about our future events. Screen. Okay, so if you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join the future ones, our upcoming speaker series will be on March 29th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on integrating medicine towards an ecology of mind, body, and planet by Dr. Peter Wayne, who is a researcher, a practitioner, and an instructor of mind, body, and integrative therapies. He is an associate professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and director of the Isha Center for Integrative Medicine. This event will be happening on Zoom, and here is the QR code where you can find a link to register for this event. The research at Sadhguru Center has two different focuses. One is the perioperative outcomes, especially in cognitive aspects, and also the impact of mind-body interventions on physical, mental, and emotional well-being. And then we are going to post a link in the chat where you can access all the publications from the center and learn more about the research done at the center and ongoing projects as well. If you would like to support this work of weaving together science and spirituality and learn more about the meditative practices, there are many ways to join the studies happening at the Sadhguru Center. So these are some studies that are ongoing. This QR code will take you to more information about each of these studies. But briefly, we have 4 studies that are currently enrolling. Bliss study, which is looking at Shambhavi Mahamudra Kriya, the impact on brain health and aging. Rest study, which looks at Shunya intensive program on sleep architecture and the impact on sleep deprivation resilience. Branch study, looking at Shambhavi Mahamudra Kriya, Shunya, Samyama practitioners, the impact on brain age and sleep. And also inner engineering impact on relationship study, which is looking at people who take Shambhavi Mahamudra Kriya and the impact on their interpersonal relationships. So for the first 3 studies, participants should be able to travel to the hospital in Boston, and we do the study assessments. For the last study, you can be anywhere in the US and you can participate online. So this is a wonderful.
Not for the branch studies, okay? So they can take it from anywhere. The third one.
Yes, okay, that's a new update. So the branch study, you can also participate from anywhere in the US. We will ship some wearable devices to you and you can participate. So to learn more about these studies and see if you're eligible, please scan this QR code and learn more about it. And you can always reach out to us and ask any questions. We also have wellness programs for different clinical populations. All of our programs are offered online and use evidence-based yoga and meditation practices tailored to each of the populations. And you'll find the link to sign up for any of these programs and share it with anyone who may be able to make benefit of these programs and also participate in their research. We're posting the link in the Zoom chat. We also have an internship program. The aim is to nurture the next generation of impactful leaders and scientists, researchers. The summer applications are now open. This QR code will give you more information about how to apply for the internship programs. And we have also launched a monthly newsletter where you receive updates about upcoming events and all the research findings and publications and highlights of what is happening here at the Sadhguru Center. This is a way to keep in touch with all of the exciting happenings at the center in the field of science and spirituality. If you're not already part of our mailing list, the link is here in the chat box and you can join us. And here are the social media handles on Twitter and LinkedIn where you may follow us for updates from the center's work. And you can reach out to us anytime at Sadhguru Center at bidmc.harvard.edu. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Saketh, again for your wonderful presentation. And thank you to all our wonderful audience to be with us. We hope to see you soon in another event. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.